Hey folks, it's Rob and welcome back. This is my series on the player's manual from the Red Box set from 1983 for Dungeons and Dragons. We're getting there. We have one last character class slash race to get through, and that is the Halfling. Got another piece of Jeff Easley work here. Yeah, again, I find the art in this book really does help sell all the concepts to someone who basically may not be terribly familiar, which would be, if you were in '83, mid '80s, there's like animated representation of halflings in the sense of hobbits, but otherwise, eh, your media does not support this. So, uh, obviously, if you read Tolkien, there's hobbits, and let's face it, halflings are hobbits with the serial numbers filed off because literally they are. They were originally hobbits in the material until the Tolkien estate said stop it. So they became halflings. And actually, in the developed Mystara setting of it, they do develop halflings into something else. They do. And a lot of people play halflings as little murder hobos. So, your mileage may vary. Let's start at the top here. Halfling description. A halfling is a short demi-human and looks much like a human child with slightly pointed ears. I will say they don't tend to actually look like children. They're just like children height. Um, Go Google some images. They tend to not look like. I wouldn't call a lot of those children, right? Um, Halflings rarely have beards. They are outgoing but not unusually brave, seeking treasure as a way to gain the comforts of home, which they so dearly love. Halflings are woodland folk and usually get along well with elves. They have special abilities in the outdoors. A halfling character must start with a score of 9 or greater in both dexterity and constitution. So, again, halfling's a little hard to come by in the way the characters are generated normally in this game, at least as rules is written. Halflings behave similar to fighters and dwarves. Read the description of your fighter class for some tips on playing your halfling. Remember your special abilities, see below, and use them whenever possible. A halfling saving throws are as good as those of dwarves, and you may survive where others fall to magic or poison attacks. Explanation of Halfling Experience Table. So, the usual XP. When this number of experience points have been earned, the Halfling automatically moves to the next level of experience. Title. Your Halfling should use this title when talking to others. Instead of saying, I'm Touchberry, a second level Halfling, the character would say, I'm Touchberry, the Warrior. Halfling Saving Throw Table. Death, Ray, or Poison, 8. Magic Wands, 9. Paralysis or Turn to Stone, 10. Dragon Breath, 13. Rod, Staves, or Spells, 12. Pretty good to start out. And they get a bit better. Um, Again, spoilers, but later on, your level cap is quite low with a halfling, but there's like veterancy for combat improvement, but basically, like your raw abilities don't really get any better. Titles. So you progress like a fighter. 2,000 XP for first level. For the first level advancements to level 2. 4,000 for level 3. You are Halfling Veteran, Halfling Warrior, Halfling Swordmaster, just like the fighter, but with Halfling in front. Prime requisite. Halfling has 2 prime requisites, Strength and Dexterity. Either of these ability scores is 13 or greater. The character gains a plus 5% to bonus to experience points earned in every adventure. If both of these scores are 13 or greater, the XP bonus is 10%. So, if you have a fairly middling character of like 9s and you got to have those minimum 9s on dexterity and constitution. But if your strength, dexterity, and constitution are all like 13, this gets you 10% bonus XP. A worthy consideration. Before you go, I'm going to be a fairly middling thief. Maybe be a fairly middling halfling and get bonus XP. Minimum scores. Halfling characters must have 9 or better in both dexterity and constitution, as we were just saying. Hit dice. 6-sided die is used to determine halfling's hit points. A halfling starts with 1d6 hit points plus constitution bonus, if any, and gains 1d6 more hit points plus bonus with each level of experience. Armor. Halfling may wear any kind of armor and may use a shield. However, their armor and shields must be specially made for their small size. Even dwarf side armor is too large for them. So that's always a complicating factor because, you want to get the nice, cool loot. That nice +1 suit of chainmail looks real nice. That mail shirt. Shame it don't come in your size, bucko. And you can't really go and just get it worn, get it trimmed down to the halfling size either, like you do with the dwarf. Weapons. A halfling may use any small size weapons, such as a dagger, short sword, or short bow. Halflings may not use two-handed swords, longbows, battle axes, pole arms, or other large weapons. Again, the small frame has a factor here, right? A halfling gains several combat bonuses, some due to their small size, and can hide easily in woodlands. So, combat. Halflings often use missile weapons and are better at dodging the attacks of large creatures than other characters. All halflings, gain the following bonuses in combat. -2 to armor class when attacked by creatures larger than man size. So, let's say you happen to have a halfling who happens to have, let's say you just have like a chainmail, right? And a shield made just for your size. So, base chainmail and shield is AC 4. Let's say for some reason you don't have any dexterity adjustments. It's AC 2 against big creatures, because you take 2 off of that. So if an ogre is attacking the party, the halfling is actually quite hard to hit. +1 bonus to hit roll when using any missile weapon. So, I would say here in the small weapons, the sling is definitely a consideration again. But short bow does do more damage, because the arrows do more, but it's more costly. But, you get a +1 to your hit rolls in your missile weapons, in addition to any dexterity bonus that you might already have. You also get +1 bonus to individual initiative, which is an optional combat rule if everybody's doing individual combat initiative. More typically, combat initiative, which we haven't even really begun to talk about yet, is side by side. So, the players would roll initiative and the DM would roll initiative for the monsters, and that would determine who's going to declare first. Hiding. Outdoors, halflings are difficult to spot, having the ability to seemingly vanish into woods or underbrush. In such cover, they can only be detected 10% of the time. The DM will roll. Halflings can even hide in dungeons, although not with as much success. In normal light, a halfling finds some shadows or cover to hide in, remaining absolutely quiet and not moving. The attempt at hiding will succeed 1/3 of the time. To use this ability, tell your DM. The DM will roll 1d6. On a roll of 1 to 2, indicates success at hiding, as long as the character does not move or make any noise. Magical light, such as a cleric's light spell, will ruin the attempt. If the character is carrying any light, it will be impossible to hide. So, obviously, while you're carrying the lit lantern, kind of hard to hide. But, that's not actually the hiding ability outdoors is quite good, better than the thieves. And in the dark, in the dungeon, it's still pretty good, actually, but it's very situational and doesn't come up that often. And it's not like your character is going to backstab somebody, right? You're not actually a thief. So that's the halfling. And we did the character generation rules, so we're going to move right past this here. And we're going to pick up again where we left off from before after character generation, because we got a little into the classes and the stuff there. And we're going to talk about the next sections. And First item here is players are not characters. It is important to remember that the player and the character are two different persons. The more the two are kept apart, the better your games can be. The most obvious example of this is the dice rolls you make. All dice rolls are called game mechanics, as are other details such as armor class, hit points, and so forth. These things would not be part of a character's knowledge. The characters would talk about armor, health, and attacks, but never about ability scores, hit rolls, or other parts of the game. Everyone can usually tell whether the players are in the role of the characters or being themselves, handling game mechanics. If there's any doubt, the player should clarify. Suppose that a player has a chaotic character, unusual but not impossible. The character will act wildly at times, but the player should remain calm while dealing with the others. If the player acts chaotic, the game will become very confusing and less fun. There are many ways that this can affect the game, especially when players know something that the character doesn't. For example, if a character starts a fight a new, unknown monster, and the DM says, "It hit you, save versus poison, please," and then all the players know that the monster is poisonous, but the better players will ignore that information. The character doesn't know about the poison and shouldn't use that player information. The characters will probably find out after the battle when they talk to their wounded friend and discover that the wound stung like poison or is discolored. All such descriptions are left to the DM's imagination. Effectively, we're kind of talking about meta play here. A question like, what time is it, could be answered two different ways. In real time, which any player can find by looking at a clock, and game time, of which the DM should be aware, but of which the characters might only have a general idea. The DM could reply, real time it's 7:30. Game time it's past noon, but you're not sure exactly. And, in most of these settings, you're not going to have a clock or a wristwatch. Clocks did exist in ancient world, but they were very uncommon in very specific circumstances. Like, we are aware of water clocks existing with the ancient Egyptians, but they weren't used in the way we use clocks because they weren't exactly the same thing. Most people told time by the sun and the stars and the moon. And most people actually weren't really into what time is it at night. It was just dark, right? And you're aware when it's pre-dawn because obviously the sky starts to change and light up. But yeah, you don't have like a precise concept of time, unless you're maybe an astronomer, astrologer. Calendars are definitely a thing. However, clocks, not so much. When the players remember the difference between themselves and their characters, everyone can have more fun in role-playing. If a character has low intelligence and wisdom scores, for example, and then does something stupid, the player can also say, I was playing my character, and others should remember not to get mad at the player. Their characters may indeed get mad at the stupid character, but it's very important to remember that the player is a different person. This should not be used as an excuse for bad or selfish play. The DM should watch all the role-playing closely to help everyone have the most fun. Since the object of the game is to have fun by playing roles, stupid or weak characters can be as much fun as smart, powerful ones if the roles are played well. The dungeon master may say at any time in the game, you don't know that, or you wouldn't think of that. Good players will learn to avoid this type of problem by keeping the character's knowledge and player knowledge separate. How to prepare. So, D&D games are most fun with 2 to 6 players, plus 1 dungeon master. Which, yeah, I gotta say, solo can be fun. One-on-one can be fun. But really the game's forte is having a decent group, but not a vast group. I've played in groups up to like 10, or was it 12 players. It gets a bit over 6. 6 players and a DM is pretty optimal. Maybe 5 and a DM. Uh, Everyone gets an opportunity to do things. Everyone, the DM has a fair chance of balancing the adventures well, and generally everyone doesn't gets an opportunity to play, right? When you have like 12 people and one DM, everybody needs the DM's attention. You are only going to get so much of it. Now, with larger groups, I see here the mapper and caller role. These are definitely useful things. They become extra important with the larger groups. But we'll get there. So, D&D games are the most fun with 2 to 6 players plus 1 dungeon master. When you get a group together, each of you can pick one of the characters included in this booklet. All the different types are there, and each character is ready to go with ability scores, hit points, and alignment. All you have to do is pick the one you want, think of the name, and then select some equipment. One person must be the dungeon master. That's because, in the end, with this game, someone has to be there to kind of move the pieces and make all the things work in the background. And if there's nobody to be that mind, the game doesn't work. Now, whoever that is, the person should read the Dungeon Master's rulebook to see what is involved. This must be done before a group gets together to play, because I can assure you, nobody has time for you to read this entire booklet while they're waiting on you. This is literally 48 pages of material. You ain't going to just go blitz through it and pick it up immediately. You're going to need to read it. Some of it requires more attention than others. Like, there's monsters listed in there and treasure and things like that. It's not all just like rules, but you need to spend time to read that first. If your aspiration is to be a dungeon master, bless you. It's underappreciated. It's hard work. And honestly, your players should thank you from time to time. Because really, being a dungeon master is a lot of prep and a lot of balancing and making judgments. And you don't get to have that heroic character unless you're going to bend the rules and drop in your own little, your own little character. And please don't do that. Don't make yourself the star of the game. Make the players the star of the game. Maybe one of your players can run a game too, and you could be the star, be a star in that game. Remember that everyone will be learning together during your first group games. The Dungeon Master's Rulebook contains step-by-step instructions to help everyone learn, but have patience. A module, separately published adventure, should not be used in your first games. The DM should use the dungeon in this set, which contains many hours of entertainment and can be used for 2 or 3 games. The B series of modules may be used after that. And I highly recommend the B series of modules. Keep on the Borderlands is great. Great sandbox. Great place to pick up. Just as a stereotypical B adventure. While you are using that adventure, the Dungeon Master should review the rules. The additional rules may be added at some point if desired. More adventures and dungeons may either be created by the DM or purchased from stores. Eventually, your characters will reach 4th level and you will want to move on to the D&D Expert Set rules. Setting up. When your group gets together to play, everyone should bring what they need, including dice, pencils, and paper and characters, preferably on character sheets. Refreshments, if desired, are often brought by everyone, as a game may go on for hours, and I can assure you, last game I played went on for 5 hours. Start to finish, admittedly the entire adventure, but 5 hours. A table is normally needed. The Dungeon Master sits at one end, with the secret information about the dungeon to be explored. The DM often uses an upright piece of stiff cardboard called a shield or screen to hide the description and maps of the dungeon so they are not accidentally seen by any of the players. It's also a good place to roll your dice behind that shield. Players sit around the table away from the DM where they can all easily see any maps made during the adventure, the order of the fights, figures if used, and so forth. To avoid confusion, the table should be kept clear of other items. During the game, players should be allowed to refer to the player's manual whenever they wish. They should not be allowed to see the Dungeon Master's rulebook during the game. The mystery and excitement of unknown monsters and magic can be spoiled if someone looks up the details during the game. If you only have 2 or 3 players, the DM may allow you to use a few hired non-player characters called retainers. The rules for these retainers are given in the Dungeon Master's rulebook. There's a small amount in this book, we'll get to the end. But yeah, primarily the rules for retainers are in the DM's guide. Generally, you don't get a lot of first level characters with retainers because they don't tend to have a lot of money, but B, also, the first level adventures tend to be, well, first off, there are level requirements for retainers, and there's a special case in the first level where you can hire first level retainers, but generally it's more of a second level thing. Or, I mean, honestly, some games never hire retainers. Most of the games I've played didn't have retainers, but I guess not in the regular sense. Like, once I moved up to domain play, I had lots of NPCs working for my character, and certainly, like, soldiers and attendants and people in my castle and, specialists. And I guess I could have called upon any of them at any point, and I certainly did use for the defense of the estate, right? So, Mapper and caller. Although each person will be playing the role of a character, the players should also handle the jobs of mapping and calling. Any of the players can be the mapper or caller, whatever their characters may be. So these are player roles in the game, as opposed to character roles. Okay, it's nothing to do with whether you're a fighter or a cleric or whatever. It's you're going to be one of the people doing, essentially the mapper is a bit of an administrator in that they are going to be, well, let's read it. The mapper is the player who draws a map of the dungeon as it's explored. One or more of the characters should be making maps, but one of the players must make the actual game map. The map should be kept out on the table for all to see and refer to. Pencil should always be used in making the map in case of errors and tricky passages. You also might find a secret door or something you might need to add on. Mapping is an important part of the imagining where your characters are. Sooner or later, all players should learn to make maps. If you play often, take turns at mapping. It is an important and useful skill to learn. So, yeah, like when I was doing this, right? This is the map I drew. And it is useful to have the map, I can assure you. Sometimes the DM will give you a handout. Don't count on it. Make maps. They might keep you alive. They might help you decide where you're going to go. It might help you find treasure. And treasure is XP. And that's half the battle. No. The caller is a different role for the players at the table. And the caller is a player who announces to the Dungeon Master what the group of characters the party is doing. The caller must check with every player to find out what all the characters are doing and then tell the DM quickly and accurately what they plan to do. The caller does not tell the others what to do. The caller merely reports what is going on. Think of the head juror at the foreman of a jury. He collects the votes, but he doesn't tell people what to vote. He collects the votes and gives the votes to the judge. That's what he does. Or he tells them that we can't come to a decision, right? In this case, it's quite useful for like your party lead, the person who's going to, essentially lead your party to be the caller. But this is most useful in larger groups where you have plenty of players and everybody is going to be doing their thing. This shunts some of the work off onto a player, off the DM, to ensure that everyone's actions are going to be official, right? Caller's first job is to find out the party order, the way that the characters are lined up or grouped during the normal travel. Caller should also report the movements of the group, such as we'll go northeast through the woods, or we'll turn right at the next corridor. Battles are always more complicated, and the DM should then take time to check with each player instead of handling it through the caller. You may have games without callers if the Dungeon Master is willing to ask each player what each character is doing and make notes to remember the actions. But it's usually easier and more organized if one player acts as the caller. First steps to take. When all the players are together, with characters ready, each player should take a moment to think about the adventure to come. Some of these things apply to players, and some apply to the characters. Who is your character, and who are the other characters? Have you adventured with them before or not? Are any of them friends or enemies? Should you keep an eye on any one character? Who can you trust completely? Why are you going? Are the characters just out to explore, or is someone looking for a specific item? Are you out to rescue a prisoner, destroy a famous monster, or some other goal? Games are usually more fun if a specific goal is kept in mind. If nobody is sure just what they want to do, you can waste a lot of time doing nothing. Where are you going? Nearby caves or a castle or some other dungeon? Have you brought the equipment you need to explore? When are you going? Do you plan to explore a dungeon at night when more dangerous creatures could be around? Players, decide when the game will end. It's very easy to play longer than you intended. Set a time for quitting and stick to it. Remember to leave some time for dividing the treasure found. What are you going to do? Look for big monsters or small ones. Will you run from danger or face it? What can your party do, considering the abilities and special items available amongst the characters? So, you got your classic 5W here, right? Who, what, when, where, why. Those of you who are old enough or have taken certain classes might remember that from English. Who, what, where, when, why. I know I remember it from grade school. Treasure. Before the adventure begins, all the players should decide how the treasure will be divided after it is found. This is a very important decision as characters earn more XP from treasure than from anything else. The method of division is left entirely to the players. The most common method is described on page 55. You may use it if you wish, or if you may make up your own. This method should be chosen before starting to avoid arguments later. Now, page 55 is handy right here on dividing treasures. Actually, this is an actual accurate page listing. Hey. Excuse me. Marching order. You should arrange your characters in line, either singly or 2 by 2 for standard marching order. And I'd say for dungeons, that's appropriate. If figures are used, the DM can easily see everyone's position. Otherwise, write the marching order on a piece of paper for the DM's reference. You should have at least one fighter in front, as this is where most of the action takes place. A short person, halfling or dwarf, should also be in front of taller folk. Those behind may still see clearly and are able to cast spells or shoot arrows over the shorter characters' heads. Weaker characters, magic users and thieves especially, should be in the center of the marching order, protected front and rear by fighters or clerics. If this is not possible, the characters with the best armor class and or hit points should occupy the outer positions. If you change the marching order during the game, and if a front fighter is badly wounded, for example, be sure to correct the figure setup or the DM's diagram accordingly. Tactics of play. When you are ready to go, your Dungeon Master will start telling you what the characters see. In beginning games, the characters often start the dungeon entrance. The DM then describes the entryway, asking questions of the caller when choices can be made. Turn right or left, for example. All the players should listen carefully to the descriptions and play the roles of their characters as they react to the situations that develop. The marching order will be used as normal positioning of the characters as they proceed down corridors. In empty rooms and after battles, party members usually spread out to search for hidden treasure, but someone should be left to watch for approaching monsters. The DM will keep track of who is doing what in case a monster appears. When creatures are encountered, fighters, dwarves, and halflings usually move towards the encounter, while magic users move back to avoid attacks, adding their magical powers to the battles where needed. Thieves may also move back, or may try to slip by the encountered creatures if possible. A thief can help turn the tide of battle by attacking a monster from behind if the creature doesn't notice the thief first. Remember, however, that a clever DM may have monsters arrive at the rear of the party occasionally when other monsters are at the front. The rear of the party should never be left defenseless. Clerics can often fill the need for a strong guard as they wear armor and fight well. If an encounter is peaceful, those characters with high charisma scores should do most of the talking. If they are weak, negotiations should be made from a distance. 10 to 20 feet is fine. When special needs arise, those best equipped to handle them should move to the scene, while the rest of the characters stay in the marching order. For example, a thief should move forward each time a door is found to search for traps and pick locks. After doing the job, the thief should move back into position. Thieves normally do not open doors, preferring to leave that task to stronger fighters in case there is a monster waiting on the other side. Ending the adventure. The end of a D&D game often comes when the party's resources have been used up. For example, when spellcasters have used most of their spells, or when several characters are wounded, having lost half of their hit points or more, and have no available magical cures. Even if all goes well, the game should end 15 to 30 minutes before the planned stopping time. The remaining time is used by the DM to calculate and award experience points, and by the players to divide the treasure. If characters are still in the dungeon when they decide to end the adventure, they must still find their way out and back home. When they have arrived at a safe location, the adventure ends. Most dungeon masters allow shopping after adventures so characters can restock items used, such as oil, torches, and so forth. And if this is left for the next game, players might forget to restock and can find themselves short of supplies while deep in a dungeon. Players must keep track of items used, and DMs should be strict about supplies. However, everyone should remember that the purpose of the game is to have fun, not bookkeeping. The DM should make allowances for beginners. Characters who return to a safe place resume their normal day-to-day lives. Beginning players and DMs do not normally deal with this during games. The town business that would naturally occur can become an adventure in and of itself. If the DM has all the details of the hometown available, either those given in the D&D expert set or details made up by the DM, town adventures can be very entertaining. They do not normally involve much fighting. So the one in the expert set is the town of Threshold, which, it's a set in Specularum in the Mystara setting. Very kind of Slavic country. But, that's us up to page 55. I'm going to stop there since we're over a half hour. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.